This video will provide information about assessment for general education courses at Wayne State University. It will summarize your instructor individual assessment report and help you to interpret the report so that you might use it to reflect upon and improve your general education courses. If you taught a course with the general education designation and participated in general education assessment in that class, you should have received an instructor level report in your email, which includes a summary of both your course's reported assessment data and the combined data for all students in the Gen Ed categories associated with your course. If you taught multiple Gen Ed courses that were assessed during the same time frame, you should have received a separate email containing a separate report for each course. The instructor level Gen Ed report has 4 pages. The first page contains the instructor's name, the course coded number, and the CRN for the course being summarized in the report. This information will appear at the top of each successive page in the report. The report you are seeing here provides results for an intermediate composition course taught in winter 2023. Identifying information for the course has been removed for this example, and the report is presented here with the direct consent of the instructor. The information at the top of the page also shows how many students were assessed for this report, in this case 22 of 23 students. Below the instructor and course information on the report on page 1, the title lists which general education designation was assessed. In this case, it was the Intermediate Composition or ICN designation. It also lists the semester in which the assessment data were submitted. Here, the report reflects data submitted in winter 2023. On page 1, there is a general description of the purpose and process for Gen Ed assessment. If you are interested in learning more about the Gen Ed assessment process, the report includes links to find this information. Towards the bottom of the first page of the report, a description is provided about how you can use the information in the assessment report. For example, the information can be used to strengthen your teaching of the learning outcomes associated with the Gen Ed designation in your report. Various resources for the training and assessment for the Gen Ed program can be found using the link listed in this section of the report. The second page of the Gen Ed instructor report provides 2 tables summarizing the results of the assessment. The first table shows the 4 Gen Ed learning outcomes for intermediate composition and presents the number of students assessed for each learning outcome. In this example, 22 of the 23 students were assessed for all 4 learning outcomes, probably because the instructor used a single assignment to complete the Gen Ed assessment. When multiple assignments are used for the assessment and learning outcomes are being assessed at different times, it is not uncommon for the percentage of assessed students to differ among the learning outcomes. The second table summarizes the data submitted for assessment for this course. The 4 learning outcomes assessed for intermediate composition courses are listed in the first left-hand column of information in the table. The N columns in the table provides the number of students assessed for each learning outcome. The mean column is the mean score for each learning outcome, and the SD column is the standard deviation for each learning outcome. In the example presented here, 22 students were assessed for ICN learning in the course. Looking at the second row of the table, the average of their scores for learning outcome 1 was 1.6 with a standard deviation of 0.5. The remaining columns in this table provide the percentages of students that attained each level of the scale. Students were assessed with scores ranging from 0 for does not meet expectations for the learning outcome to 3 for exceeds expectations for the learning outcome. The general education program has a target score of 2 for meets expectations or higher. Looking at the second row of the table again, 0% of students exceeded expectations for learning outcome 1, but 59% met expectations and 41% partially met expectations. This instructor also determined that there were no students assessed in the class that performed at the does not meet expectations level for learning outcome 1. The same information is provided for each learning outcome in the additional rows. The last row is an average of scores across all 4 learning outcomes. Overall, the highest learning performance was for learning outcome 2 as indicated by a mean score of 2.3, and the lowest learning performance was for learning outcome 1, as indicated by a mean score of 1.6. Students seem best able to master learning outcome 2, as indicated by 100% of them meeting or exceeding expectations for this learning outcome. On the other hand, students seem to struggle more with learning outcome 1, as 41% of them did not meet expectations for the learning outcome. The third page of the Gen Ed Instructor Report provides a visual representation of the information presented in the first table on the previous page. In addition, each learning outcome is compared to the assessment data reported for all courses in the Intermediate Composition designation that semester. The 4 Intermediate Composition learning outcomes are listed at the top of the page. The horizontal stacked bar graphs in the top figure indicate the percentages of students assessed in this course, denoted in green, and not assessed, denoted in red. This is the identical information presented in the first table on page 2 of the report. The lower figure indicates the percentage of all students assessed and not assessed for all intermediate composition courses in winter 2023. In this example, 96% of the students in this course were assessed, compared to 83% of all intermediate composition students in winter 2023. The final page of the Gen Ed Instructor Report provides a visual representation of the information presented in the second table of the report. It also compares each learning outcome to the assessment data reported for all courses in the Intermediate Composition designation that semester. Here, the horizontal stacked bar graphs in the top figure indicate the percentages of students that exceeded expectations, denoted as green, met expectations, denoted as blue, partially met expectations, denoted as tan, or did not meet expectations, which would be denoted as red, as in the lower figure. The 4 intermediate composition learning outcomes are again listed at the top of the page. In this example for learning outcome 1, 59% of the students in this course met expectations and 41% partially met expectations. This adds up to 100% of the data for learning outcome 1. Again, this information is identical to that presented in the second table of the report on page 2. For learning outcome 2, 27% of the students exceeded expectations and 73% met expectations. We can then compare the data in the top figure to the data in the bottom figure to compare the assessment results for students in this course to all intermediate composition students in winter 2023. For learning outcome 1, the instructor of this course found that a similar percentage of students in the course met expectations at 59% compared to all other intermediate composition students that term at 52%. However, 23% of all ICN students exceeded expectations for learning outcome 1, but the instructor of this course determined that no students exceeded expectations. The instructor of this course found more students partially met expectations at 41% compared to all ICN students at 22%, but placed none in the does not meet expectations category compared to all ICN students at 3%. Examining how students in your class perform compared to all the other students assessed for Gen Ed in the same designation can inform pedagogy. You may notice that your students performed at similar levels for certain learning outcomes. This may suggest the assignments used to assess that learning outcome are comparable to those used by other Gen Ed instructors in the same designation. Or you may notice your students performed much lower for a certain learning outcome compared to the population of students assessed in the same designation that semester. This may suggest there is room for improvement in student learning for that learning outcome in your class, and perhaps the assignment you use to assess that learning outcome could be revised. The Office of Teaching and Learning, or OTL, can assist you with revising or redesigning assignments. Or you may notice your students performed much higher for a learning outcome compared to the population of students assessed in the same designation that semester. You could view this as suggesting you need to increase the rigor of the assignment used to assess this learning outcome to capture greater variation in learning. On the other hand, You could view this as suggesting the assignment does a very good job of measuring student learning in the learning outcome. It's really up to you to decide what the results comparing your students' Gen Ed performance with students in the population being assessed that semester indicates. Like most trends in learning, we know that there is variation in student learning of material. There is generally a small proportion of students that underperform and a small proportion of students that overperform compared to the other students in the class. We should, therefore, not be surprised to see similar variation in our own Gen Ed assessment results.